July 1st, 2026, was meant to be a very quiet day for the royal family. Usually, their calendar is full of big events, meetings, and parties that everyone sees on the news. But on this specific day, the family wanted to keep things very private. It was a day to be calm and stay at home together in peace. This was the day that Princess Diana would have been 65 years old if she were still alive today. The people who work at the big office in Kensington Palace did not make any big plans for a public ceremony. They did not hire a professional photographer to take a new picture for the public to look at or talk about. They did not even write a formal letter or statement to share with the newspapers. It was supposed to be a day that simply passed by without much noise from the outside world. But by the time evening came around, the day had changed into something no one expected. It was no longer just a quiet date on a calendar. Instead, the day belonged to a young girl that no one had written a script for. This girl was Princess Charlotte. She is only 11 years old, but she did something so small and so natural that it made everyone around her start talking. It was a moment where she was just being herself, and she wasn't trying to be fancy or official. When the news of what she did finally reached the public, people felt a very strong emotion. Even though she is just a child, her actions felt very important and heavy. This is not a story about a big statue or a formal speech from the palace. It is a story about a granddaughter who never got the chance to meet the famous woman she was named after. It is about what happened when she finally got a real chance to know who her grandmother really was as a person. Here is the story of what happened that day. This is more than just a sweet moment shared by a family behind closed doors. It is a story that deals with something the royal family has found very difficult for almost 30 years. That big question is, who gets to decide how the world remembers Princess Diana? For a long time, the leaders of the palace tried to control her memory. They wanted to make sure it was always professional and neat. But now, people are wondering when that control should stop. When does a memory stop being something that is managed by adults and start being something that is truly felt in the heart? For almost all of Princess Charlotte's life, Diana has just been a name she heard or a face she saw in a gold frame on the wall. She was a character in stories told very carefully by the adults in her life. But what happened on this 65th birthday changed all of that forever. It changed in a way that the palace workers did not plan and could not have seen coming. To really understand why this moment made so many people feel so much, we have to look back at something small that happened a few weeks before. It started with a pretty pearl bracelet that Charlotte wore very quietly. She wore it because it looked just like one her grandmother used to wear a long time ago. After that, we look at the actual birthday itself and a private request that Charlotte made. This was a request that caught everyone in the house by surprise. Nobody who lived there saw it coming. Then we have to talk about the moment that followed that request. It was a moment that was so touching that even the grown-ups in the room had a hard time not crying. They had to fight back their tears because it was so sweet and sad at the same time. Finally, we have to think about what it means for the future. Diana's story is no longer just in history books or official papers. Now, her story is being carried by an 11-year-old girl who is learning about it for the very first time. Let's look closer at all of these details. Diana, the Princess of Wales, was born on July 1st, 1961. She was born in a house called Park House in a place called Norfolk. She lived a very famous life, but she sadly died on August 31st, 1997. She was only 36 years old when she passed away. Because of this, Princess Charlotte was never going to be able to meet her in person. Charlotte was born in the year 2015. That was 18 years after the car crash that took Diana's life. For Charlotte's whole childhood, her grandmother has been like a person from a legend. She existed only in old photographs that have turned a bit yellow with time. She existed in the stories her family told her and in the special jewelry that was passed down to her with very careful instructions on how to keep it safe. One of those special pieces of jewelry became big news just a few weeks before this birthday. On June 13th, there was a big event called Trooping the Color. This is a very famous parade for the king's birthday. At this event, people saw Charlotte wearing a beautiful bracelet made of 3 strands of pearls. It looked exactly like a bracelet that Diana used to wear a lot in the late 1980s. That bracelet was made by a designer named Nigel Milne back in 1988 for a charity that helps babies. The real, original bracelet now belongs to Charlotte's mother, Catherine, the Princess of Wales. Catherine wore the real one on that same day. Charlotte wore a version that looked just like it right next to her. It was a very clear and special way for a mother and daughter to honor the grandmother who wasn't there. It was like a quiet signal to everyone watching that they were thinking about Diana. People who watch the royal family very closely saw the bracelet right away. People who write about fashion called it a quiet tribute. A tribute is a way of showing respect or love for someone. At the time, only a few people realized that this was just the beginning. They didn't know that even more meaningful things were about to happen. Many people have also started to say that Charlotte looks a lot like her grandmother. This is something that experts who talk about the royal family mention more and more often. One expert named Ingrid Seward works for a magazine called Majesty. She has noticed that Charlotte has more than just Diana's name. She also has a special kind of kindness and warmth, just like her mother Catherine does. She looks people right in the eye when she talks to them, and she is very good at talking to strangers. This is exactly what made people all over the world love Diana so much many years ago. According to reports from a magazine called Hello, Catherine has been working very hard to make sure Diana stays a part of her children's lives every day. She doesn't want Diana to be just a serious person from a history book. She wants her children to feel like they can ask any questions they want about her. She wants them to know her as a real person with a real life. This effort is very important because Diana was more than just a princess with a fancy title. She was a very brave woman. She once walked through a field of dangerous landmines in a country called Angola. She did this to show the world how much these hidden bombs hurt innocent people. She also held the hand of a man who was dying of a very scary sickness called AIDS. At that time, many people were too afraid to even be in the same room as someone with that sickness. Diana also made sure her sons, William and Harry, saw what it was like for people who did not have homes. She wanted them to see the real world, not just read about it from a far-off palace. Charlotte did not get to see any of those brave things with her own eyes. She is learning about them secondhand, which means she is hearing the stories from other people. She is learning in small pieces. Now that she is 11 years old, she is finally old enough to ask real, deep questions. She is old enough to understand the real answers. This is the world Charlotte was living in when her grandmother's 65th birthday arrived. She is a young girl standing at the edge of a very big family history. She is only just beginning to understand what it all means. This birthday was special because it was the one day of the year that was all about the woman she never got to meet. It also came only 8 weeks after Charlotte had her own 11th birthday. For her birthday on May 2nd, the palace shared a new picture of her taken by a photographer named Matt Porteous. A writer named Duncan Larcombe knows a lot about the royal family. He said that Charlotte is now old enough to hear the full version of Diana's life story. When children are very little, parents usually tell them very simple and happy stories to protect them. But as children get older, they can handle the truth, even the parts that are sad or difficult. Moving from a simple story to a real story is a big step for a family. It is not something the palace tells the world in a news report. It happens very quietly inside the house, long before any strangers notice. People who are close to the family say that the events of July first happened in 3 different parts. Each part was smaller than the one before, but each part felt even more important and meaningful. The first part of the day was about that pearl bracelet. People who know the family say that Charlotte asked specifically if she could wear it again that day. She didn't want to wear it for a party or for a photo. She wanted to wear it for what someone called an ordinary Wednesday at home. There were no big meetings or events planned for that day. There was no reason for her to take the jewelry out of its special box, but she wanted to wear it anyway. We don't know for sure if she was allowed to wear it, but people who know the family say this was a big sign. It showed that this birthday meant something special to Charlotte. It wasn't just a choice about what to wear. It was a choice about how she wanted to feel on that day. She was deciding for herself how to honor her grandmother. The second part of the day was even quieter. A source said that Charlotte asked her mother, Catherine, to tell her a new story about Diana. She didn't want to hear a famous story that everyone already knew. She didn't want to hear something from a book. She wanted to hear something small and very specific. She wanted a secret story that only the family knew. Catherine said yes and told her a story about a normal afternoon she remembered from family talks. It was the kind of small detail that never gets written down in history books. One person said that this was the moment Diana stopped being just a name on a piece of paper. For Charlotte, she started to feel like a real person who actually lived and breathed. Catherine had been waiting for a long time for Charlotte to ask this question on her own. She didn't want to force the stories on her until she was ready to hear them. Then came the third part of the day, which was the most touching part of all. During their talk, Charlotte learned a secret about what Diana liked to do. Diana used to take pretty flowers and press them between the pages of her favorite books. This was a quiet habit that very few people in the world knew about. When Charlotte heard this, she reportedly asked if she could try doing it too. She wanted to go out into the garden that afternoon and pick some flowers to put inside her own books. Someone close to the family said that when she asked this, the whole room went very quiet. The adults who were there were very moved. Some of them even felt like they might cry. They weren't just sad. They were happy that Charlotte wanted to be like her grandmother. One person told a newspaper that it was the closest anyone had felt to Diana in a very long time. It felt like she was right there in the room with them. To understand why this is so different from a normal palace event, you have to think about how things usually work. For almost 30 years, the memory of Diana has been handled by offices and professionals. They chose which pictures to show and which stories to tell. They made sure everything was very careful and distant. But Diana herself did not like being distant. She always said she wanted to be the queen of people's hearts. She didn't want to be a cold picture behind a piece of glass. On July 1st, 2026, there were no offices in charge. There was no big group of people deciding what to do. There was just a young girl asking her mom a question. And there was a mom who decided to tell the truth instead of giving a planned answer. Catherine has said before that she wants her children to know Diana as a real human being. She doesn't want her to be a symbol or a statue. This birthday was the first time everyone could see that Catherine's plan was working. It didn't happen because of a speech. It happened because of a simple afternoon in the garden. There were no cameras there to take pictures of them. There is something very gentle and kind about that image. It is a picture of a child trying to reach out to a grandmother she never had. She used a bracelet, a flower, and a simple question to do it. Sometimes it is easy to forget that the royal family is still just a family. They feel sadness and loss just like everyone else. Their grief is the same shape as yours or mine. The only difference is that the whole world is watching them. Prince William has also talked about this in the past. He wants his kids to know his mother as a person, not just as a headline in a newspaper. He said they talk about her a lot at home in a very natural way. Her name comes up during normal conversations, not just on special holidays. What happened on July 1st is the best proof that this way of raising children is working well. It didn't happen because a parent told the child what to do. It happened because Charlotte decided to do it all on her own. She wanted to know her grandmother on her own terms. What this means for the future is very big. For a long time, Diana's story belonged to the public and to people who write books. Now that is starting to change. Her story is starting to belong to a child. This child is just beginning to understand the big gift she was given when she was given her name. Her name is Charlotte Elizabeth Diana. Now she knows why that last name is so important. Diana never got to reach the age of 65. She never got to see her granddaughter. She never got to see Charlotte pressing flowers into books just like she used to do. She never saw her wearing her jewelry or asking questions that no book can answer. But on that quiet afternoon, a woman who has been gone for almost 30 years became very real to an 11-year-old girl. Diana's light is now being carried by a new generation, and it is being kept alive by love instead of just history.